Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. As you have heard during the last couple of days, and as you are aware, a significant part of the colored gemstones used in the jewelry industry is produced by artisan and small-scale miners, ASM. But who exactly are they? I would like to bring to you today over 20 years of experience working in the mining and gemstone mining industry in Africa to give you a picture of ASM which may be a bit different from what you are used to. When we read press articles or reports about gemstone mining in Africa, we get the impression of a very binary world. With on one side, large, well-financed mining corporations working in a modern manner and following industry standards. And on the other side, hordes of informal artisan miners barely equipped with picks and shovels. And often, we hear of conflict situations between the artisans and the large-scale miners. The term ASM puts together artisan and small-scale operators. But what is the difference between the two? Well, in many countries, the law defines these two categories quite clearly. Usually, artisans are those who don't use mechanized equipment and who operate with no organizational structure or just a basic one. Small-scale miners have a higher degree of organization, some mechanization, and are subject to higher expectations in terms of legal compliance. The transition between small-scale and large-scale mining is usually defined by the quantity of ground moved or of gems extracted, in the case of gemstones. Artisan is often taken as a synonym of illegal, but not all artisans are illegal. Some countries have made clear policy decisions to support artisan mining because it creates a lot of employment. ASM are responsible for a significant part of the world's gold, base metal, rare metal, and gemstones production. Depending on sources, there are anything between 50 million and 100 million artisan and small-scale miners in the world. Most colored gemstone deposits discoveries are made either by luck or by systematic prospecting done by artisan miners. They are therefore very important in the colored gemstone value chain. Today, I would like to present a more diverse and realistic picture of the ASM actors in Africa and of the tremendous opportunity ASM offers for local development, as well as for meeting the increasingly demanding criteria of the downstream industry and of the consumers. A few pictures to illustrate this variety. Let's start from the top right. This is a dense medium separation plant of gem fields in Montepuez. Below, we have an emerald mine in Zambia. That's not gem fields, that's another one. And at the bottom, we have the Jansol mine, the Jansol ruby mine in Kenya. These all fall in the large-scale categories. Let's go back towards the left. You have some examples of artisan mines. The top photo is an artisan Tsavorite mine in Kenya, and the bottom photo is a tourmaline mine, also in Kenya. Now, in the middle, this is the important part. You have operations falling in the small-scale category. At the top, a tourmaline mine in Nampula, in Mozambique. In the middle, a Tsavorite mine in Kenya. And in the bottom, a sapphire mine in Nigeria. These are all licensed mines run by indigenous companies, local companies. Each of these projects represents a different level of capital expenditure. CapEx for small-scale mines varies from anything between a few tens of thousands of dollars to a few $1 million. Note the similarity between the pictures in the middle and the pictures on the right. It's just the size which is a bit smaller. So let's try to understand a little bit further where this diversity comes from. It has a lot to do with geology. This curve shows the frequency distribution of rare earth element deposits in the world. I'm not showing you a curve of gemstone deposits. The reason why I'm not showing a curve for colored gemstones is that there is no data available to produce one. But if it was possible to make one, it would look exactly like this. Note that the scale at the bottom is a logarithm scale. What this model shows is that, like for any other geological objects, the small deposits on the top and on the left are the most common, whereas the large ones that can sustain a large investment are exceedingly rare. These are the ones in the bottom on the right. You heard yesterday Sean Gilbertson talking about the challenge of finding a large enough sapphire deposit. Another important and relevant distinction is between primary and secondary deposits. On this sketch, I have tried to summarize the main types of secondary deposits and their relations to primary sources. So from left to right, you have a primary deposit. On top of it, an alluvial deposit, which forms through the weathering of the primary deposit. Then you have a colluvial deposit on the slope, and in the bottom of the valley, you get to the alluvial deposits. Alluvial deposits can sometimes be preserved in the environment and occur as what we call paleoterraces. Then on the right-hand side, you have a colluvial deposits which formed through the weathering and the erosion of a low-grade source. This type of situation is very common with basaltic sapphires. Gems that are resistant to weathering, like ruby and sapphire, can form secondary deposits, and those that are not, like emerald, are mostly extracted from primary deposits. Because of their geometry, mining operations over secondary deposits are highly mobile, and that is quite important. They move as part of the deposit is exhausted. Here is an example from a colluvial tourmaline deposit in Nampula. This is a map of the artisan workings in 2013, in 2016, in 2018. Primary deposits, on the other hand, do not move so much. And in Africa, many primary deposits have been exploited for anything between 40 and 100 years at the same spot. Before we go any further, a few more words about the regulatory framework. The prerequisite to any meaningful development of a mineral deposit is a license, whether for a large-scale corporation or for ASM. When you do mining, capital investment is not only made of equipment and wash plants. It also covers ore access infrastructure, such as shafts or overburden removal campaigns. The situation is the same for an ASM who has to dig a shaft to access the ore and extract the gems. He therefore wants his investment to be protected, and a license provides security of tenure. In most African countries, the law has provisions for artisan mining licenses and for small-scale mining licenses. When you talk to ASMs, a key issue they raise is that of access to finance. Again, a license is a prerequisite to access finance. This is the first thing that will be asked, be it from a microfinance organization or from a local commercial bank. Another aspect that we read about in international reports about ASM is the set of standards to which ASM players should conform. ASM should not be burdened with complex systems which do not bring them tangible value. It is important to keep in mind that host countries have laws and regulations, and I think that ASM should only be held to their compliance to these laws or to their progress towards achieving such compliance. In my opinion, small primary gemstone deposits offer the best opportunity to develop a sustainable mining industry for local organizations and also provide the best opportunity to put in place traceability systems, at least initially. Many of these deposits have a sufficient size to sustain mining by an organized structure over a period of at least 5 to 10 years. And organized structures also allow a better integration of skills and equipment and the creation of a local pool of competence in partnership with local training institutions. Typical examples of such primary deposits include pegmatite deposits with beryls and tourmalines, emerald deposits, tsavorite and other garnet deposits, as well as primary ruby, sapphire, and spinel deposits. The example of the photo on the photo shows the Garbatula sapphire mine in Kenya. Most of these primary deposits occur as vertical or steeply dipping reefs, and therefore are largely mined underground. It is quite interesting to see that in Africa, gem miners have very little expertise on how to do proper underground mining. Yet, such expertise is available on the continent from small formal gold mines, which have been there for more than 100 years. There is therefore an opportunity to use this expertise from the gold mines in order to improve underground gem mining methods. During this Congress, we heard a lot about traceability. Traceability systems are still in their infancy. Although the technology involved attracts a lot of attention, the main challenge is the control of what enters into the system. It is a lot easier to put in place such controls on well-defined formal small mines than it is on nomadic communities exploiting secondary deposits. To illustrate further this development opportunity, let us look at the case of tsavorite. At the bottom right, you have an informal artisan mine on a tsavorite deposit in a very remote part of Kenya called Turkana County. On the top left, you have one of the most advanced formal tsavorite mines in Kenya, in Mwayirimba, which employs over 50 people, pays taxes, and is constantly seeking ways to improve its operations. We are currently working on a training program for tsavorite miners, covering all key aspects of geology, mine planning, and mine engineering, including hoisting, drilling and blasting, and ventilation, to industry standards. In supporting ASM, training and skills are very important because, contrarily to equipment, skills do not rust or break down, and they can be transferred to many people easily. Although I think that small-scale miners should be the priority in terms of sustainable development programs, I am not saying that artisans should be forgotten. As much as possible, they should be first formalized without infringing on any other existing mineral rights. Like for the small-scale miners, skills are very important. Skill transfer programs must take into consideration the characteristics of gemstone mineralization, as well as existing local knowledge and experience. Any equipment involved must be affordable and available or producible locally. The photo on the slide was taken just 2 weeks ago. It shows an artisan sapphire miner in northern Ethiopia who had just been trained in using a sieve as a manual jig, which is an important skill which is quite rare in Africa. And he immediately adopted this method to increase his productivity. He didn't want to let go of the sieve. In conclusion, there are many reasons why the gemstone industry should support ASM. One of them is that supporting ASM will help more reliable and predictable production streams for the industry. By numbers, small deposits will always remain a very important source of gemstones. Their exploitation offers the best opportunities to create and develop a modern local mining industry and to put in place and experiment the traceability systems the industry needs. In my opinion, there should not be debates about whether small scale is the right way or large scale is the right way, because both ways are still going to exist as long as they respect the law. I know many artisan and small scale miners in different African countries. I can assure you that none of them want to remain where they are. They want to progress. They want to improve. Skills and training are therefore very important to support them in achieving this. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed, Cedric. Superb.